Okay, well, welcome. So I know people were trickling in, so I'll do a little introduction again. So I'm Laura Morrison, and obviously associated with the STEAM 3D Lab at Ontario Tech. The whole session today is facilitated by our group. So we've got Dr. Jeanette Hughes. She introduced herself before, but maybe I'll ask her again. Me, so I help run the lab. Jen Robb, she also helps run the lab. Margie Lamb, who does a lot of work with facilitation and research. And we'll cycle back to Jeanette if you want to jump on cam and mic.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm really happy to see you all today, and happy to offer these free sessions for you and help as you go on this journey. Yes, Jeanette Hughes. Mm-hmm. Nice to see you again. I really won't be facilitating anything today, but I'm here in the background to support, and I'm hoping that Laura and Margie and Jen will share additional plans that we have coming up for future sessions, because we are hoping to secure some funding. We've got some funding to do these sessions, so we're hoping to secure a little bit more. It would be great to hear from you personally what you think would be basically some ideas that could help you in your online teaching. So I hope you have a great session.
Thanks. All right, so I'm just going to put the link in the chat box to the slides. So I'll give everybody a minute to bring the slides up on their own screen. So there's the bit.ly link that Margie just put in the chat box, and I'm just putting the longer Google Drive link. It doesn't matter which one you click on, but I'll just give you a minute to pull them up. Let me know if anybody has any difficulty accessing. And in the meantime, I'm going to start sharing my screen. So those resources in the slides, they're for you to use throughout the session today. There's embedded links, and they're also there for reference after. So we've got a whole bunch of digital resource banks that we've linked to. We've got links to individual tools that you can use in the classroom. So if you can't remember everything that we go through today, you'll have the slides as a reference later. So just to give you an overview of the session. So it's divided up into two main sections. So the first is going to be what is online learning? What does it look like? We've got two people who are here today, Sara Jane Larocque and Katie Pitts, who are two friends of mine who have already been teaching online. Katie's been teaching online for a couple of years in the ESL realm, and Sara Jane is a teacher in Egypt who has been stuck in Canada and can't get back to Egypt, and has been teaching her kindergarten class online. So she's got some really interesting insight because she was an entirely face-to-face teacher, and now she's quickly shifted online. So she's going to talk about her process. Then we've got some things to think about when you're setting up your own classroom. A lot of you are already teaching, so it's just things to think about now and in continuing. And then we've got a flipped classroom model example. So if you're thinking about some effective ways to teach online, one is a flipped model. And if you're not sure what that is, we'll go into how exactly to set that up. The second portion of the time today will be spent in hands-on breakout rooms. So Margie is going to be going over Google Classrooms with you. I'm going to be going over Google Meet, so how to set it up, ways to add future dated meetings, attachments, all the various features. And then Jen Robb is going to be going over how to record your slides, so how to create kind of interactive like lecture and also activity-based slides. And then we're going to go just into a quick debrief and check in with, you know, what kind of sessions would you like to see in future? What questions do you still have? And then that will be the end of the session. So that should take us to about, that would be 9 a.m. my time. So that's probably 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, so just to get us started, we've set up a Padlet here. So if you wanted to click on the link within your slides, or I'll copy and paste the link in the chat box. But we're asking, what are some questions that you have coming into the session today? And the reason that we're asking that here is so that throughout the session, Jeanette or any one of us might be able to pop onto the Padlet, read the questions, and respond. And likewise, if you as a teacher see somebody else's question posted there that you're actually able to speak to, so you may have an answer to, you're able to actually write a reply. So just to give you a quick overview on how to add, so I'm just going to scroll down here. When you double click on the Padlet page, I'm not sure why that might be the wrong link.
Yeah, Laura, it looks like there's two links happening. The one that's in text in the slide links to the one from last session, but the one, if you actually just click on the linked text, or, yeah, that one there.
I just put the new one in the chat box. It's that
exactly.
Second. Thanks, Jen. So when you pull up that link and you click directly on the page, a text box appears that allows you to put in a title. I'll do question I have, and then it allows you to write your question. So how do I set up Google Meet? That kind of thing. The tools at the bottom there allow you to upload a file, embed a link, add a photo, and then the more gives you more options to record an audio capture, to draw. So not that you're going to be doing anything too in-depth, we're just asking for a question, but Padlet is one of the tools we also wanted to show you so that you could see another really easy to use collaboration tool. So students don't need to have a password. All they need is the link, and then they can log in. I'm just going to do a refresh. Okay, so we can see some people have already started typing. And let us know in the chat box if you can't find the link to this Padlet, if it took you to the other one. So I'm going to delete my comment.
These are all really, really good questions.
Tips for teaching K from a distance. Okay, that's great. We'll be going into that soon. Okay, and Margie, I think you'll be able to take that Google Classroom question. Okay. Ooh, making sure that your online content isn't too overwhelming for students. Very true. This will come down to streamlining. It'll also come down to giving your students smaller kind of activities to do at a time, so not overwhelming them with volume. But we'll go into some of that in a bit. Okay, so presenting information. Margie, will you be talking at all about ways to present information on Google Classroom that isn't just text-based?
Yeah, well, we'll be showing the different ways that it links with all the Google Suite, how to upload links, videos, etc. So, and I'll want them to do a little bit of hands-on to test that functionality out. And also, I'm going to answer one of these questions. Definitely in terms of organizing, that's one thing you want to consider in terms of Google Classroom, use of topics, etc. So we're going to go through all that. But I'll answer some of the questions here as well.
Great. Okay, so just let me know in the chat box if you weren't able to access this link, okay? I'm going to remove the link that's at the bottom of the slide because that's not the active link. So when you click on the image there, that's where the active link to this Padlet is. And when you click on that, it takes you to today's Padlet. So I'll just give people a minute just to finish typing their thoughts. If you don't have a question right now, but you think of a question throughout the session, feel free to jump back onto the Padlet. And as we're going through it, again, Jeanette or any one of us, if we have a moment, we can pop on and reply. And if you as a teacher have already started teaching and you have some suggestions for any of these comments, please feel free, where it says add comment, you can click and you can respond directly. Okay. I'll just update one more time. All right. So I'll just leave that going in the background. Okay, so generally, we want to just go over a couple key things to consider in terms of, what online learning looks like. So essentially, we've got two different types or styles. So one is synchronous, and this is where students and the teacher are interacting in real time. So they're doing something similar to what we're doing right now. We're in Google Meet. We're all here at exactly the same time, and we're able to chat, write to each other, and we've got immediate connection and feedback. So the good thing about synchronous sessions is that the teacher can instantly check in with students. Students can get feedback right away. There's the personalization piece. So the student and the teacher are building rapport with one another. There's the possibility for students to collaborate in real time. The only thing about synchronous sessions is that sometimes they're difficult to coordinate because of people's schedules. And also there's the issue that, we seem to be running into of privacy. So teachers being able to see into students' homes. Katie's got a few interesting examples of things that can go wrong in synchronous sessions. And then there's the asynchronous types of sessions. So this is more students doing work in their own time. They still generally keep to a weekly schedule of when things might be due, but it's more, discussion post based. It's, getting readings or slides or activities in their own time, completing them and then submitting them. And there still is the possibility for collaboration. There's still the possibility for students to work in small groups, but they're not necessarily meeting synchronously. So they're not meeting necessarily at the same time with cameras on, collaborating that way. So this means that there's more flexibility in terms of time. There's the ability for students to go a little bit more in depth with content, as long as the activities that were created encourage depth of responses. So in my class that I teach, and this is obviously different because it's for higher ed, but every week students are given readings and slides, content, activities that they have to go through. And it takes a couple hours for them to sit with the content, to reflect on it, to engage in the activities, and then respond on the discussion board. So it does, it allows students the time that they need to sit with the content, as opposed to being moved along in a classroom setting in real time. So you may use Google Classrooms, Moodle. Our university has just shifted to Canvas. But for me, in terms of my experience, I would say having a mix of both synchronous and asynchronous is probably the best, so that there's the opportunity to connect and build teacher presence, and help students build their community, and then coupling that with in-depth time for reflection and, working through activities at their own pace. So that's the ideal. Then in terms of, what comes with synchronous and asynchronous, you would be embedding a lot of online digital tools. So students there's a whole variety that I've put there. It's definitely, it doesn't just stop at these tools. There's a bunch more that we've embedded in the slides, but essentially you're leveraging or you're using these tools to help students to either remember content, so that's low on Bloom's taxonomy, to understand or work through content, to apply it, analyze, evaluate, create, right? And in the notes there of your slides, you'll notice that I've put, for each step of Bloom's taxonomy, I've put a different tool that you could potentially use. So something like remembering, you could use a tool called Poplet. So this is like a mind mapping tool. So it'll help students connect concepts and ideas. For understanding, you could use something like Google Meet or Google Docs, where students are connecting with one another or you to understand content. Applying, there's a tool called PictoChart, and this is an infographics creating tool. So they can take content, they can reflect on it and make some sort of infographic based on what they've understood. Analyzing, there's a tool called Symbaloo. If you've never heard of Symbaloo, it's a way, it's kind of like a visual way to bookmark the web. So while, you know, a lot of people have these kind of drop-down tab bookmarks, Symbaloo allows you to create a tiled image of all your bookmarks. So you could color coordinate them. It's really interactive, but students can use that to analyze content on the web and group it into different categories. Evaluating, there's this new tool called Wakelet, and that allows students to take content from the web and put it into a timeline where they're evaluating the reputability of the different sites and kind of building either an argument or an understanding of a topic. And then finally creating, you can use something like iMovie or Movie Maker, where students are creating digital responses, digital reflection pieces, reactions to whatever content they'd been working with. So those are just some ideas. And again, you're using the digital tools to support all the different stages of learning. So from remembering all the way to creating. And then in terms of, the kind of online learning that we're suggesting here today, it's really a blended kind of learning model where you're taking digital, virtual, online experiences and you're combining them with real world experiences. So Sarah Jane's going to give us a couple examples of how she sets up her classroom, giving students activities. So they're connecting with her online in the virtual world, but then in their own homes, they're actually going to complete the activities, working with real tangible objects to build understanding and then checking back in. So I'll
Laura,
just pause there. Yep.
There's a question from Stephanie,
Yep.
and it says all these examples you're given based on the specific taxonomy, are they listed somewhere else by category with description by any chance?
Do you mean like grouping more tools than just what I present as an example?
No, you're telling us, okay, based on, say, analyzing, these are the ones you could use.
Yeah.
But like when I look at this screenshot that you have, it doesn't say, it's not in a category. So I don't know whether PictoChart is best for analyzing or applying. And if I've never heard of it, how do I know which one I could be using?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with these tools is that they can actually be used for various things. So you could use PictoChart to help students remember or to help students understand. It's how you, as the teacher, decide to adapt the tool. But there's so many resources at the faculty going around right now where we've started to group the different tools in these kind of different headings. So if you want, at the end, we can send you something that may give you a more concrete kind of idea of where you could use the different tools.
Great.
And sorry, there's one more question. Do students need to create accounts for these tools? We are being advised that anything that we must use has to meet the criteria of the board's privacy policies guaranteeing that their information is secure. And I think some of them vary, but I'll let you answer that,
Yeah.
Laura.
Yeah, I mean, some of them do vary. Some you don't need logins, some you do, some are connected to school accounts or licenses. So it's completely board dependent, and it's kind of something that you have to work through on a case by case basis, unfortunately. And the other thing too is like in the lab, there's certain accounts where we can create, and you'd be able to do this too. You can create a classroom and create accounts for students and just call it like student 1, student 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and provide students with these kind of dummy account logins so that none of their personal information is being used. But they're still given an account and able to log in. So there's a couple different workarounds, and it's just kind of figuring out on a case by case basis with each tool what's possible and what's necessary. Were there other comments, Margie?
That was all. But
Great.
Jen had a great a tool that just FYI, if people want, so it's similar to this, but it actually groups it. Is that correct, Jen?
Yeah, so I was just doing a quick search while we were talking about it, and there's a few, if you just search for Bloom's taxonomy and Web 2.0 tools, for instance, there's a few different visualizations, and they even provide additional tools to what we have here. So yeah, we can definitely follow up with that resource that Laura was mentioning, but there are a few different, like the one I linked in the chat is kind of like a visual pie chart sort of which tools fall into which level of Bloom's taxonomy. And of course, there's more tools than you could fit in something like this. And some of these tools I'm looking at now are outdated, but they at least help start to group it a little bit better. And as you become more familiar with certain kinds of tools, you'll be able to kind of insert them into this sort of visualization much more easily.
Great, thanks. And I saw Trisha just brought up that link. Do you want to tell us a bit about that link?
Hi. It's a resource that it's an amazing resource, actually. It's my Bible, and it lists by what type of teaching you want to do, what kind of app you're looking for, goes into great detail of what each of those apps can do and how you can use it. Jonathan, you should know that one already. It's actually a program that we recommend for our students at Ontario Tech, and it's about $25, but it's worth every penny of it. I refer to it all the time.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'll just pause there. Were there other questions, comments about any of the synchronous, asynchronous tools? And we'll be going over the blended learning model in a second with Sara.
So just Lori's comment too is that it is, and I echo this, it's very important, and particularly for beginning educators, we might learn a lot in the Faculty of Ed and all these great and fun applications and software, but different boards have very explicit and regimented rules and policies around the use of external apps. And so it's really important to understand that and not just create lessons, even though you've used it, they could be great. It's really important to know the policies. So definitely echo that, Lori.
Great. And it's hard for us because this is just an open session. So it's for all different boards, private, public, Catholic, English, French. So this is just, tools that you can use, but for each board, for each classroom, you're going to need to figure out, what's possible in your particular case. All right, so if there's no other questions or comments, Sara, I'm going to hand it over to you. And what is easiest, Sara? Did you want me to share my screen, or do you want me to stop sharing and you share?
Yeah, how about, I think sharing the screen. Yeah, okay. And then it'll kind of keep me on track.
Great.
Okay, so yeah, I shifted from fully face-to-face to online about 2.5 weeks ago. And so it's definitely been a learning curve. And I'm finding that collaborating with my team is really important during this time because I'm not a super techie person at all. But the way I'll talk a little bit about what how my school has structured it and how it's working for us. So essentially, we have 2 hours a day of online instruction. And the first half hour is their first, as soon as they start their learning, is a pre-recorded video that I've done the day before. So in that video, I will include the morning message, I'll do their calendar, and we'll do kind of interactive learning that I want them to focus on, for example, sounding out words or something like that. Maybe we'll watch a rhyming video together. And again, this is pre-recorded. And then at the end, I'll review their schedule for the day and go over each point. So at any time, they can go back with mom and dad and look at what they're meant to be doing. So it's just an instruction for that particular topic or area of learning. And then so then they'll go off and do their learning. And then the next hour, the next time we come online, we'll be together live. And I'll do a half-hour guided reading with a small group. And then I'll usually do a 20-minute session with either a small group or one-to-one with some of the students who need a little extra help. And then the last 10 minutes of that, we'll do any questions that either the children have or the parents have about the content for that day. So anything that may have come up that they're a little confused about and need a little review, or maybe they need one-to-one help with something, I'll be there during that time. And then the last half hour, we'll review some of our work. We will do a think aloud reading, and then we'll do a sharing circle. So then we will consolidate their learning. They come and they show us their work, and they can also have the opportunity to tell us a story, talk about something that has happened. So it's just a general sharing circle so that we can continue to strengthen our community. And then how I use the Google Classroom. So Google Classroom is super new for me. Essentially what I do is I make an assignment every day, and under the assignment, I will post the schedule. I'll post the first video, the morning message video, and then any additional, what are they called? Attachments that they might have for one of their lessons. And then at the end of the day, we would have recorded our last lesson, and I'll upload that as well in case anyone has missed that particular lesson. Is there in case they want to go see it. And so for those assignments, those daily assignments, every student has the opportunity then to take a picture of their work or make a voice recording, depending on what the assignment is, and to enter it into their into our Google Classroom site. And so then we've made ours public so that, because I'm trying to recreate a classroom environment for them so that they can see each other's work and the same way we would in the class. And then for their comments, the comment sections can be private. So I'll comment on each piece of work that I get in and send that back to the kids, and just maybe something they need to work on, like maybe making spaces a little bit more, but also, of course, I highlight the positive, we know that. And so, yes, and so for two example lessons. So what I'm finding is really important during this time when making my lessons is to think about what materials the students have, how to make it engaging for them, and how to make it so that they will have as minimal parental support as possible. Because of course, I find kindergartens need a lot of support, and they might not, parents might not have the time right now, and they might not be able to give them the kind of support that you would have in the classroom. So to try to strike a balance of course, they will need a little bit of setup help, but to try to find things that they can do as independently as possible. So one of my lessons that went really well, it was a huge hit with them, was just a sock lesson. So we were learning how to add, practicing how to add. And so I had to think about what materials are they going to have in their houses. And of course, we need to have, well, in this case, manipulatives to work with. And then what do they love? They love their own socks so much. And what can they kind of do all by themselves is get their socks. So first I had I said, first you're going to go count all your socks, go find your socks and count them all up. And then we're going to do grouping. So I want you to add your blue socks with your red socks, and your green socks with your yellow socks, and your socks with pictures and your socks without pictures, so that they get to have the opportunity to work with their own things. And like I said, the reason it was a hit because they love their own socks so much. So they sent in, I got loads of videos and loads of pictures of this particular activity, and like they all brought their socks during our sharing circle. So that was a good one, and it was an easy one to have them go and do. And then another one that worked really well is we're learning how to write letters right now, like to each other. So I had them, oh yes, and we're also learning about communities and jobs, people's jobs. So I had them pretend that they're astronauts. And so first they had to build a spaceship, again, using things in their own houses. So anything could work for that. And then I had them write a letter from outer space saying, what do you see in outer space? How do you feel in outer space? And what adventures are you going to have in outer space? And so the reason that I think this one was successful is because, again, the same way in the classroom, I tried to make it have an element of pretend to make something engaging. You can recreate that at home as well. And so again, we got lots of videos and pictures, and of course their letters, which they wrote to the class and to each other's friends about their experiences in outer space. So essentially, it's, for me, what I'm finding is working with my team, collaborating a lot, and trying to think of things that are creative and will work at home and that they can engage with.
That's great. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Oh, you're welcome.
I saw some comments in the chat box. One was genius. Jill asked, Sarah, are all of your families on board?
On board with the online learning?
Jill, do you want to clarify? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I think, yes, they're all on board with the online learning. They understand that we're in a unique circumstance, and so this is what we have to do right now. Definitely, I have some parents who are, and kids who are more engaged with it than others. So sometimes from some of the students, I'm not getting all of their assignments. And so what I'm finding with that is to try to make a lot of accommodations, because I know that families are all different. And so maybe mom and dad are working a lot right now and are on different schedules. And so trying to figure out a way where they can get the learning, but also have parents understand that that we can have options here. So we don't, to be receptive to the idea that if a parent writes in and says, okay, we weren't able to do this one, to be understanding and say, okay, we'll do another one later.
Great. And just one more question. Did you have students who didn't have a lot of socks and or only white socks? If so, what would you do, or would you have done, to make for full inclusion?
Interesting. So no, we didn't. So actually, the reason that one was successful is because everyone did have lots of different kinds of socks. But it's it's a good point because it's not something I thought about beforehand. I think next time going into it, I would say something like, okay, we can use our family socks too. We can go about a different way of finding something, or maybe just articles of clothing in general. The reason they like the socks is because they're always, trying to take their shoes off and show each other their shoes and the socks and stuff like that. Like I think it's like a hidden article of clothing. They kind of like it, but yeah, in this case, it did work.
Great. So I think just, and some people are suggesting too, just opening it up to, whatever articles of clothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, great. So just for the sake of time, I'm just going to bring up the daily schedule that you had shared with us. I don't know how much time we have to go in depth with it, but do you want to just let them know what it is? And
Sure. So this is just the whole day broken down by subject. And in my morning message, what I would do is just go by each heading and subject, and just give an explanation about what they're supposed to do. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And if there's a link or something like that, I would say, and now we go over here and click this link, and so that students might be able to go about this independently.
great. So I think, preparing something like this that you could share. So the initial is to, the reason is to share with the parents and the students so that everybody kind of knows what's happening throughout the day. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, yes, this would be, I would attach it as well in case for some reason they missed it in the video. They also have this, because this is the learning for the day.
Great. Ooh, so many questions. Okay. So Sarah's she's teaching in Egypt, but is working from Canada right now because she got stuck with COVID. But Twitter accounts, yes. Swati, we do. Sarah, do you have a Twitter account?
I do not.
Okay. Well, Swati, just remind me at the end, or actually in the very first slide, the introduction slide, there's the Twitter accounts for the lab and for each of us, so you can follow us that way. All right. So thanks very much, Sarah. If there's more questions, feel free to post them on the Padlet, and one of us can get back to you, or if it's a specific question for Sarah or kindergarten, I can always check in with her and I can write the response as well. So thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. So we'll just flip over to Katie. So Katie's been teaching for a couple of years online, ages 4 to 14. And she just has a couple tips for teaching online, especially English. Katie, do you want to take it?
Yeah, so hopefully so to be honest, I focus less on the teaching English, but I can definitely speak to that and more on just kind of my experience over the last couple of years with both online teaching and more specifically my experience in the last couple of months. So I'll try to keep it pretty brief, but yeah, I've taught for a couple of years, over 600 students, over 1,200 hours. So I'm not a classroom teacher, but I have some of these kids I've taught for 2 years, a few times a week in their home. So I feel like I have kind of built those kind of teacher relationships. So in terms of teaching online, I really resonate a lot with what Sarah said about engagement, finding ways to when it's online, to provide maybe a shorter teaching time than you maybe standardly would in your regular classroom, and then spending more time when you have that one-on-one time, being able to actually see what they understood. You will be probably sending them away with activities, and those activities will be probably more, at least in my case, more self-teaching than you may have done usually when you were able to interact with them all day. So using that FaceTime, if you have it, to really see what they're picking up on and engaging that way, I find really helpful. So I'm not barreling ahead with certain students without having checked in a way that that was meaningful, especially when you don't have that FaceTime. So another thing I teach, as she said, kids of a huge age range and ability level, but you guys will be having, obviously, your classroom age, but you will probably have different abilities in terms of both disabilities as well as language abilities, speaking slowly, even technology abilities. A lot of you guys might be in public school systems. Their kids may not have the best technology at their fingertips. They may be using, and we know that networks are stretched right now, bandwidth. So speaking slowly, speaking with a huge expression is a really big thing. I find that is very helpful. And also getting comfortable with looking like an idiot. So that's a big thing too. My first little bit of teaching online, I felt really stupid. I'm talking to a screen with big arms. I find it especially embarrassing when my family members are there watching me do it. You will have family members watching you talk like this, and just, figuring out how to get comfortable with that is just something I'm preparing you for, is like having these conversations with nobody while somebody like your kid is watching you, or your dog. So that's something that, it's an adjustment. But the bigger you are, even with the older kids, the more they stay engaged, they stay watching you, and they stay interested. It works. The bigger your face is and everything. I do teach one student at a time with VIP Kid is the name of the company I work with. So I know it will be different when you have a group of students. But there are some things that I was thinking of that can be done, in terms of, I was even talking to Laura about, taking an object like just a stuffed toy, something they might have, and then pretending to throw it to another kid and say their name, and then they maybe say a word, and then pretending it to throw, and then they pick up their teddy bear and they say a word. Things that make it act like they're together, because I definitely pretend I am with my kids in a room. Like I high five the screen. It looks stupid, but it gets them interacting with me and keeps them engaged. So that's kind of so we have a interactive screen. I do not use an interactive screen. I use a screen. I use a program called Manycam, MANYCAM, that I can put things up in the background, like stars when they're doing a good job, or different things. You can get different pictures, but it doesn't interact with them. But I do use, so I guess I do actually, I use a platform where they are able to draw on it. Actually, they are able to draw on the screen and I can draw on it, but it's not interactive. It's not interactive with them being able to put pictures and things like that too much. So I hope that answered that question. Okay. Yes, thank you, Jennifer. So really quickly, I don't want to take up too much time, but I think it's really valuable to talk about the experience I've had since COVID. So China, obviously they were hit first. So my students left school in mid-January for Chinese New Year, and none of them have gone back to school yet. So my students, it is now April, and they have all been off school 100% since then. This is not meant to scare you teachers into thinking we don't know how long this will last, but I've been teaching kids who have been at home for a long time. So the ways that changed my approach, for one thing, I make a lot more effort to talk to them about themselves. I try to keep in mind things that they are not interacting with other people very much at all. They are in their homes. You might be one of their only engagement besides their immediate family that they have all day. So to make assignments around talking about themselves, talking about what they're doing, just showing that you're interested in them is really important right now and really valuable as one of those resources that we have as a community to kind of engage with the kids. So even though you have to follow a curriculum, if you can find ways to also add in additional opportunities for them to kind of communicate with you about how they're feeling and things like that, I think it's really valuable if you can find ways to do that. Another thing that I think is really important is finding ways to discuss physical education. Some of my students who are in the kind of epicenter have not left their home at all, like their apartment, in over 2 months. So I always ask them, so did you do any exercise? We talk about things you can do inside, and that's for the little kids. We talk about like, how many jumping jacks can you do? These are things you can do inside that does not need mom and dad there. They can do it alone. They can do it when you're not there and come back the next day and tell you how many jumping jacks they can do. And it also, if they have a skipping rope, kids are skipping inside. These are things that will help you, because it helps them burn off their energy. And I know they will have physical education as well, but reminding them, some kids parents are working, they are put in front of a screen, and I understand why that is. The parents don't have a choice. But if you can kind of get them up and moving even when you're not there, I think it's really helpful to keep our kids healthy. And as well, a thing to remember, this is more taken from my sister, whose kids are in New York City and have been learning from home for a couple of weeks. Access to screens. Those of you, especially in the public system, will have kids who do not have access to screens all the time, or sharing a computer with numerous siblings who all need to be doing their online learning. Figuring out some exercises that they can do on their own that are handwritten, and they maybe take a picture or a drawing where when one kid is using the computer, they can still be engaging with an activity that doesn't involve reading off of a screen or doesn't involve typing into a computer. So these are things to keep in mind too, to allow those kind of different abilities to access the computers, that opportunity to do the learning even when they can't be in front of a computer. So that is another piece of advice that I think, yeah, the mini projects and those mini projects that don't involve any of that computer or screen time. Last little bit, sorry, I hope I'm not going on too long.
No, go ahead, yeah.
So some funny things and some not so funny things to keep in mind during this period of time. Sarah Jane, you may or may not be able to speak to this. I love that you had some rules and things in the beginning. Sorry if there's a lag. Yeah, many kids under one. Yeah, it's the reality across and it's something that, you know, some kids may have no devices, and that's a totally separate conversation that has to happen with your board and your institution. But like, we need to remember that some kids don't have access to these tools, and some kids don't have literate parents, like English literate parents, who can help them with this stuff. So we need to be figuring out ways to be creative around that. So other things when we're doing this synchronous learning, which is what I do, reminding kids at the beginning of class, especially the little kindergartners, that it's just like school. Privacy and toilet breaks are the same thing. You put up your hand and ask to go to the bathroom. I have been walked into many bathrooms with iPads and had kids start to go to the bathroom. So for those little guys, it's those silly things you might not think about, these privacy things. I've seen many a parent walk by behind in their underwear and oops, like learning how to kind of just move on, but also when necessary, say, oh, remember the rules still apply. We put up our hand and mom and dad takes us to the bathroom. Those are for like, obviously the younger guys, but it happens. So that's a kind of a funnier thing, you know, parents walking by, parents like TV shows in the background, reminding parents sometimes that, oh, don't forget when class is on to turn down. Oh, shoot, I think I just lost my screen. So the less funny things, I'll make it really quick. So sorry, I lost my screen. So one thing, keep in mind, think about how you want to respond to kids when they talk about the virus. The kids have been talking, they're not scared, but they talk about it. They call it the scary virus. They say, you know, I can't go outside. Just be ready for how you want to respond to that. I often pivot it into positive things we do, like washing our hands, coughing into our arm. For the older kids, I make sure that they know I'm listening, though. You don't want to pivot so quickly that they don't think you're paying attention to what's going on or their fears around it. So that's something you just want to be prepared for at different age groups and different ways. And your board, I'm sure, will tell you how they want you to deal with it. Just make sure you're comfortable with that, right? Because it is a scary time and these kids will need to communicate about it. Another thing that I've found, a lot of the kids talk about things like the foreigners bringing it back to China. Language like that, we want to be careful. You might hear some kids using some inflammatory language around the virus. You don't expect it until it comes up, and you have to be ready to know how to also have those conversations too, because we know that people are hearing in different places things that are maybe really not very positive. So unfortunately, I'll answer the questions later. Sorry, I just noticed it's popping up. I'm not very good at multitasking. So yeah, just knowing how to respond to things like that are maybe a little, you know, where to escalate and where to just pivot the language. Actually, we call it COVID, not the Chinese virus, or we call it, you know, things like that, because it's something I've dealt with for sure. And the last thing is understanding Understanding and reviewing your administration's rules around disclosure. You may, hopefully this will never happen, but you may see some things in the household when you are there that you do not want to see. We are having kids who are inside in stressful situations. There may be times when you are the only person they can reach out to. I have seen children getting smacked on camera. I'm going to be straightforward about that. And I've heard some horror stories of people that have had worse situations when they are on teaching their classes. You may hear fights in the background, things like that. We have people who are in financial situations, etc., that are very difficult. So just be ready and review all of the regulations and all of the information around disclosure, what you're supposed to do, and feel comfortable with who you should reach out to, and your escalation path for things like that. Hopefully that never happens, but it is something that I have seen. So I wanted to mention that as well. Hopefully that was helpful.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. So many important points in terms of like teaching strategies, and then in terms of things that, you know, we probably weren't thinking about from both Sarah and Katie. So if there's things that you want to follow up with, like questions that you had either related to pedagogy or related to other, you know, things to think about, that you need a little bit more information on, again, if you want to pop it in the Padlet, and we'll do our best to respond to each of the questions and comments and to kind of get a conversation going. So just for the sake of time, we'll pause there with real-time comments. And again, if you want to pop it in the Padlet, and I will just copy and paste the link one more time so that you guys all have it handy. And Sarah and Katie, if you're able at any point, feel free to just, you know, take a look, and then you can let me know and I can write the responses. But if you're able to just kind of scan through and see if anybody has specific questions for either of you, that would be really great. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. You guys are both more than welcome to stay for the rest of the session, or if you need to take off, that's okay too. So thank you very much, guys.
So I have my 9 to 5, so I've taken, I'm going to hop off now, but you can feel free to send me any questions. I'm happy to answer them. I know I don't do the same kind of teaching as you guys, but I'm happy to answer from my experience teaching in COVID.
Thank you. Bye. All right. Okay, so after those real world kind of examples, there's some slides here to kind of remind you, kind of expand on what they've talked about. So I won't spend too much time because Sarah and Katie both did talk or hit on a lot of these points, but I'll just go over them very briefly. So the first thing to think about is the creation of teacher presence. And they both talked about creating mini lessons that you can give to students, so either pre-recorded or in this synchronous kind of way. Mini challenges that they can then take and do in their own surroundings. So Sarah gave the example of the journey to space and the students creating a spaceship and taking photos and sending that back, the sock activity, and then setting up regular check-ins. So this is all tied to teacher presence. So this could be regular check-ins that are in Google Meet like this, like a synchronous kind of quick check-in, or it could even be text-based. So through Google Classrooms, through email, anything that's regular so that students feel connected to you, parents feel connected, and they don't kind of feel like floating heads in space in the Ethernet. The next thing is engaging parents. So just thinking about how you're going to communicate with them. There's Google Forms might be a good option for you if you're using Google Classrooms. You could create a form that you send out weekly to get parent and student feedback in terms of things that are working well for them, challenges they may be having, so that you can then adapt and adjust your strategies on a weekly basis. Creating community. So obviously, you know, students learn best in a community, and any way that you can create that online, whether you're, you know, leveraging the collaboration tools in the Google Suite, or you could even set up a platform like Edmodo. So if you've never heard of Edmodo, it's basically a social networking platform for education. So students are protected because you can create your own private classroom. They're able to create profiles, to have discussions with one another, to share, like as in Facebook, how that social networking platform's set up, except it's protected and it's for education. There's also collaboration platforms like Padlet, which you've already used. And this one, again, is good because students don't need a login. They can instantly interact with the page. And then also thinking about setting up small groups of students that work through the course together. So maybe you set up groups of 2 to 4 students if you're using Google Classrooms so that they can support each other every week. They're maybe doing projects and assignments together, checking in, so that you as the teacher know that they're supported by their peers, and then you can check in with them and see, how are they doing as a group, how are they doing individually. And then in terms of creating engagement, so I've just indicated, obviously embedding variety, and each of these 2 links gives you activity ideas. So the first one is online activities and tools, and this is in the slides we're about to go through. And the second one is a link that takes you to a bunch of kinesthetic activities that you can incorporate into the online model. So feel free, I'm not going to go through the website with you there, but if you click on that link, it'll give you a whole bunch of different ideas that you could potentially integrate. And then thinking about streamlining. So as much as possible, keep all of the resources that you give to students, make sure that they're links, that they're PDFs, that they're digital resources. And then if you have something physical that you need to somehow get online, I've given you a link there to an app called Genius Scan. And essentially, Genius Scan, it's free. It allows you to take photos of documents. So it could be like you have a piece of paper that you've drawn something on or written something on and you want to make it digital. Genius Scan will scan it and turn it into a PDF, and then you can upload. You could also ask students if they've, depending on their age, or you could ask them to create PDFs of any written work in case it's difficult to see, because Genius Scan allows you to up the contrast and make kind of like minor edits so that the work looks very clear. So that's just one option. And then we wanted to leave you with some resource banks. So this page here links to a whole bunch of different websites that aren't just singular tools, but they're entire banks of tools that you could include. So Toy Theater is one that's new that I've just come across, and it basically has a whole bunch of different manipulatives that you can use with students. Read, Write, Think is good, especially for the language arts. Again, interactive online learning tools, manipulatives, lesson plan, activity ideas. Bite Size BBC. This used to be, I think it was BBC Kids, but the BBC has developed a whole bunch of learn at home resources that you could use. And while the curriculum is aligned with the British curriculum, you can still adapt it for Canada. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out is eLearning Ontario. So eLearning Ontario is basically the ministry's website for online courses, and I'm just going to open it up here. So you can access it depending on your board. However, if you do not currently have a board, or if for some reason you can't access it easily, you can scroll down the list to eLearning Ontario. It's just kind of like the general. And I've given you the password. So for the elementary account, it's preview_elementary, and the password is preview. And then when you log in, it takes you to primary, junior, intermediate courses, and you can browse that way. So they're not necessarily amazing, but they may give you some ideas, some lesson activity ideas that you could use, that you could adapt. So that's just for you to explore. And so now, so for the next approximately hour, we're going to give you an example of a flipped classroom model that you can do on your own. So this is an idea for setting up your own classroom using a flipped model. So just to give you an idea of what a flipped model is, so this is essentially students on their own time before class engage in asynchronous learning. So this is where they're either doing a reading before class or watching a video that you've sourced or prepared before class, so that they are able to sit with the content, learn a bit of the content on their own. And then when they come to class, when they come to the synchronous session, you're using that time to unpack what they've just been exposed to, what they've just learned, read about. So it's very much conversation-based, discussion-based. It's a time for you to check in with the students, to clarify questions and make sure that they're understanding the content. So if you can't have video sessions, because I know some boards still are working through the logistics of video sessions, there is still the possibility of being available at a certain time and having it be text-based. So it could be like a live discussion board, it could be a live forum, it could be even as rudimentary as, you know, you're going to be at your computer from 9 to 10 a.m. and replying to student emails in real time, or chat or whatever, but some sort of instant kind of connection. And then just one other thing to think about, and this is something that Sarah Jane touched upon, is making learning visible. So I think she did a really good example of having the students record, document what they're working on. And I've given you a whole bunch of different links there to resources that you could use that will help students record their learning. So again, as she said, you know, she's online for a minimal amount per day, giving them activities, checking in with them, and for the rest of the time, they're in their own home environments doing the activities. And so with the spaceship fort building activity, she asked them to take photos and videos, and then that was uploaded to Google Drive so that she could go in and check to see, you know, how the students did, and to provide individual feedback. And I think what's good in terms of how she set up her Google Classroom was that she made the sharing all public, because she said that she wanted to try and replicate the kind of sharing and work display that would happen in her real face-to-face kindergarten classroom. So a couple tools you can use there. Flipgrid is particularly good for asking students to reflect. So you give them a discussion prompt in Flipgrid, and then students reply within the app. It's a video recorded response, and it just helps with the reflection journal kind of process. So I'll pause there. Questions about the flipped classroom before we get into the more hands-on portion? Okay. All right. So this is the point where we're going to give you a kind of real concrete example of how you could set up a flipped classroom using 3 different tools. So we've got the learning management platform, Google Classrooms. So Margie's going to give you a brief intro. Then we've got Jen, who's going to go over how to pre-record mini lessons or instructions. So that's using Screencast-O-Matic and also the record function in PowerPoint slides, I believe. And then I'll be going over with you how to set up a Google Meet, future dated Google Meet, and the different tools that are available to you in the platform. So I will just give you the links here. So these are the breakout sessions after we give you the intro. And as we're talking through, as we're giving you the intro now, you can be thinking about which breakout session you would get the most out of. So if you already know a lot about Google Classrooms, maybe you go to the screen recording one, or maybe you come to the Google Meet. So it's up to you. So I'll hand it over to Margie. Margie, do you want me to stop sharing my screen, or do you want to?
Yeah, just because I'm going to show the Google Classroom. So I'll take over if that's all right.
Yep.
And I'm just going to have a dual screen here for one moment. As I'm doing this, I do have a question for each of you, and that is how many of you have, you can either say yes or no, how many of you have used or have learned about Google Classroom? As she mentioned, and I'm just going to talk, and I see a lot of you have actually had access or learned about Google Classroom. Google Classroom is a learning management system. So like things like Blackboard, D2L, Edsby, Google Classroom is that learning management system, and it allows you to manage the classwork for a class. It allows you to create one area where you to students, ask them questions, and set up material or communications. Some features about Google Classroom are the fact that it's very easy to use, from my personal opinion, and also for those that are very familiar with the Google Suite apps, it is definitely along that line. It works very similar to other Google Suite apps, and it integrates very nicely with different Google Suites, Google Forms, and documents, etc. So the three things that I particularly think are nice about the Google Classroom is the fact that it's very organized, and that it allows you to prioritize. But I will make a comment about that, and I'm going to show examples in the breakout session where if you don't manage it well with topics, it can be a little bit of a mess for students to actually see. So it's really important to leverage things like topics to keep it organized. To-dos and assignment due dates are all integrated with Google Calendar, so all great features there. Assessment, so it not only has summative assessments with grading, but it also has the ability to allow for formative assessment by asking questions. So you can do diagnostic questions at the beginning, and you can create Google Forms within it and have all that information summarized for you, as well as you can have ongoing questions as you go through. And as it's connected, so I'm just going to move this here. There, not only is it connected to the Google Suite, but there are hundreds of Google apps that you can see. I'm just going to go in right now and take a look at the Google Classroom. So let me come out of here. One of the things I do want to mention about online learning too, just a suggestion, is to thoroughly test out all of your different apps and online learning platforms before. As I've been doing this session, I've found that I've learned that if I didn't test something out, it can have problems. So definitely testing beforehand is good, and being able to look at comments is also a very important thing. So to access Google Classroom, you're just going to go into your Google account. I'm using a generic account here because I can't access it with my Ontario Tech ID. So I scroll to the second page. I go into the classroom. Now, what I wanted to demonstrate in this session is how I've seen it commonly used in elementary. So there's two ways that I've seen it organized for students, and teachers have organized their classes. The first is to set up a homeroom class. So this is where one teacher has many different subjects that they teach. And the other option is, let's say you just teach one subject, such as math. Then you might just set up this one classroom here. So I'm going to go into the homeroom where they teach multiple subjects. Now, one great other way that you can use homeroom is you can have multiple teachers use one Google class. So therefore, when students look at their classwork, for example, as you can see, I have all my topics are arranged by subject, and each of the teachers can use the one Google class to make assignments within this. So that's a really great way that students have one classroom to work with and see everything in that classroom. So this is a quite common, I've seen in recent times, where one class, multiple subjects, and you have multiple teachers using the same class. You can see here that you can create assignments, questions, materials, etc. And we will explore that in the breakout room. But it is great to know that you can have due dates coming up here and see everything in the calendar. Now, and that integrates very nicely into the Google Calendar. Sorry, I have lots of different things in here, but you can see I have my homeroom class starting here, and different assignments will appear. And then there's also people and grades. So we will explore this more as we go through, but I just wanted to show the second most common way to have your classes set up, and that is by subject specific. So this is one class that is just math. So I've set it up as math grade 5. You can see the time here, a class code is here, and this main page is your stream or your communication page. So it's where you can send a communication or a message to everyone, to specific students, etc. Or it also demonstrates all of the assignments that are coming up, and you can see the upcoming here as well. In the case of one subject, in this case, what I did in terms of organization is I put it by unit. So in the case of grade 5 math, the units are data management and probability, patterning, geometry, measurement, and number sense. And I've created different assignments within each. But this allows the students to be able to not just see a bunch of assignments, but see things linked together. So again, in our breakout session, we will discuss further. I'm going to have you create your own classroom. I'm also going to go through the archived class and show you how you can actually, if you've taught a class and have all the assignments in there and you sort of want to repeat a lot of things, how you can bring that back from an archive. I'm also going to demonstrate how a student's perspective looks. And then finally, I'm going to get you to explore the different areas of Google Classroom. So that's pretty much what I'm going to show here. Yep.
Great, thanks, Margie. Jen, do you want to just give a brief overview of the screen session?
Yeah, I can do that. I will hijack the screen myself. Just give me one moment here. So while this starts sharing, primarily in my session, we're going to look at screen recording or screen capturing. And what we mean by that is, as opposed to taking, say, a video camera or something like that and filming a video, this is using some sort of software program to capture something on your computer screen. So these videos can be made with or without your webcam visible and with or without added narration from you, the teacher. But in the context of online teaching and learning, they could take multiple forms. So you may want to create a video, a tutorial video, like one of our presenters mentioned, for how students could access a particular online resource you'd like them to use, for instance. You may wish to create an overview of an assignment or create a video like Sarah was showing us her daily schedule, kind of going through and explaining that schedule. And that might be helpful to be able to be recording your screen while you speak over it. So, oops, that's Margie's. All the slides look the same, so sometimes it's hard to tell where we are. So there's a couple of reasons why we might want to record our screens, aside from the practical examples that I've already mentioned. So aside from the obvious reason that we still want students to be learning, and this is one way we can sort of create teacher presence in this sort of weird, unique situation. One reason is that it can be a lot more efficient to provide students with videos. So while, of course, reading skills are important, things that might be otherwise long and lengthy for students to read and understand could be easily condensed down into a short couple-minute video that students can view, that parents can view, and that students also can, replay parts that they may need to revisit. Another reason is that text doesn't always lend itself so well to storytelling and anecdotes and things like that. So if you are, say, providing an overview of something and you just happen to pop up in your brain with a little example, providing that can provide students with a little bit more information than they could get just by reading your assignment or reading the activity that you're giving them just via text. So it allows for, a little bit more connection that way. Similarly, certain things like your emotion, your behaviors, cultural narrative don't necessarily translate well through text. So recording a video where you're providing your own audio narration and possibly her, your video as well, can really help in this time both establish a personal connection with your students and also provide a little bit more content and context to the information you're communicating. In one practical example, in the previous session, we talked about accessibility as a big reason why you might want to do this. Again, obviously reading is important, but for some of our students, reading long passages of text might be exhausting. They might not be able to do that very well. So providing both options, both something in text as well as something with an audio component, can really help bridge any accommodations or any accessibility issues that you may run into with teaching online. So in the breakout session, we're going to have the opportunity to explore 2 different tools for screen recording. One of these is through Microsoft PowerPoint, and the reason we decided to include this one is because it's pretty accessible. Most people have seen it before, and it's pretty simple to get started with. We have noticed that it requires the newer version, so the one that would be part of your Office 365 suite if you have this through your board. Older versions may not have the screen recording feature, but there's ways to get around that we can talk about. Another downside to PowerPoint, although it is extremely easy, it doesn't have any innate webcam support. So if you are wanting to include that visual of you as a teacher being able to connect with your students, use gesture like I'm a big hand talker, PowerPoint really won't enable you to do that. But it is a way to, if you're not quite feeling comfortable with another software, to be able to screen record your content super quickly, super easily, and then export that content into a video that you can then upload into something like Google Classroom, for instance. So just to give you a very quick overview of how this works in PowerPoint, I'm going to switch over to that now. And when we are in the breakout session, we'll have a chance to look at another tool, Screencast-O-Matic. But for this one, I just want to show you this now since it's very quick and easy to do. So you should be able to see a PowerPoint presentation now, a little bit different from the one we're currently using. But in order to use PowerPoint to screen record videos, it's very simple. Typically what I will do is I will scroll to the end of the slides that I'm using. I tend to use slides for things because they're a little bit more visual and easier for me to organize information. So I'll scroll to the end of a slideshow and I'll just create a brand new slide in there. And this is going to act as a placeholder for my video. So once I'm here, I'll go ahead and go up to the top in the toolbar here where it says Insert. Click on that. You'll go over to the far side to screen recording, which if you have the newer version, you should be able to see. And it's going to pop up this toolbar at the top here where you can make a couple of changes to what you're recording. So it gives you the option to have or not have audio, or to record or not record your pointer. Usually I leave those just the same. Obviously you want audio if you're wanting to narrate, and it can be helpful for students to see your pointer, particularly in times when you want to record a tutorial on how to access something so they can see exactly where you are clicking, selecting, etc. So it taps you out of PowerPoint. That's okay. So say I do want to record this slideshow. What I can do is go up to where it says Select Area, and I can just select, say, just the area of the slides. If you mess up and change your mind and you're like, oh, I don't want to record this slide, I want to record something else, and students need to see my entire screen, you can just select it again and redraw it. It makes it very easy to draw the area that you want to actually show. So once you've selected your area and you're happy with it, you can go ahead and click this record button, and it's going to give you a quick countdown. And then once it disappears, you are recording. So right now, as I'm recording, it's going to see me scrolling through my slides on the side here. I could go back to the beginning and start talking to the actual presentation. If I had Sarah's schedule that she provides her students up, I could be starting to give that daily message and walking them through the steps of that schedule. And then once I'm done recording that, all I have to do is hover back up at the top. I can stop the recording, and it's automatically created a video that it inserted in this slide that I'm using as a placeholder. You can keep that there, or if you wanted to take this and upload it somewhere else, you can just right-click, go down to where it says Save Media As, and it lets you download it as an MP4 file, which is a pretty standard file format for videos. So I could just name this whatever it is, pardon the mechanical keyboard, and it should have saved it to my desktop. So now I could take this into Marky's Google Classroom, upload it there, and we're good to go. So that is just one tool you can use for screen recording. Like I said, when we get into the breakouts, I'm going to quickly show you Screencast-O-Matic as well, if that's something you're interested in, which allows you to use your webcam. And it gives you a little bit more flexibility in what you can do. But just to give you an example of how easy it can be to create those videos for a flipped classroom model.
All right, thanks, Jen. Okay, so I am going to take the screen back. All right, so I'm going to be going over Google Meet and Suite. So just giving it a moment, just double checking you can see my screen. Jen, can you see my screen?
Yes, sorry, my microphone is muted.
That's okay. So I'll be going over how to set up a Google Meet, an advanced one and an immediate one. So I'll just open up my Gmail. So this obviously hinges on you having a Google account, but essentially within your Google Suite, you've got this kind of waffle menu at the top that allows you to click on your calendar, and this is where you can create future dated Google Meets. So once your calendar loads, you'll notice that you've got your days at the top, your times on the left-hand side, and this is where you can choose your day and time. So I'm going to say Friday at 9 a.m. I'd like to create a new Google Meet. You double click and you can title your meeting. So I'm going to say math or grade 5 math. You can double check your dates and times are correct. And then this is where you add your Hangout or your Meet. So where it says add conferencing, drop-down menu allows you to select Google Meet, and this gives you all of the information you need pertaining to your Google Meet. So the link, and then if students need to access via telephone, they don't necessarily have to access on their computer through video. They can just connect with you through this telephone number, and they would have to insert the PIN that they've given at the bottom. This is where you can say, in this math class, we will be discussing blah, 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 blah. So you can give an overview. And if you need to, you can also insert links that you'll be using in that session. So it could be a YouTube link, it could be a website link, and you can also add attachments. So if you have files that you need to share with the students prior to class, you can search your drive and attach them, or you can upload them from your desktop. This will automatically attach the materials that you need for the meeting. And then up at the top, you can invite your guests. So I'm using Jeanette as an example. I'm going to hit save and send. And for our settings, if you don't have an OTU, an Ontario Tech U account, it'll ask you, are you sure you want to share outside the university? I've put in Jeanette's Gmail, so I'm going to say yes, invite external guests. And then you'll see that my session appears there. So this sends them the Google Meet link, the telephone link, and all of the information and attachments that you may have added. So that's the simple way to set up Google Meet. When we're actually in the session, we'll go over all the various functions. So if you're not yet familiar with how to change the layout, if you're not familiar with how to mute other people or pin people's pictures so that they're prominent on the screen, captions. So if you have students who have accessibility issues and you need your video to be closed captioned, recording, and phone audio. So the phone audio is in addition to the telephone number that gets generated. Phone audio allows you to actually, if you're having audio issues during the meet, part of the Google Meet environment allows you to quickly connect via phone audio, and Google Meet calls you. You pick up the phone and you continue via audio. And then the last thing we're going to go over is some other useful tools that you can use in your G Suite. So embedded in all of these tools here are links to a whole bunch of different ideas for how you can use these different Google tools in your classroom. So what you can do with Google Docs, activities, lessons, what you can do with Google Sheets, forms. You can create an entire flipped classroom lesson using forms with embedded YouTube links and little reflection questions that the students complete and submit to you. So we'll go over that. And then we're gonna come back. So we have half an hour. I know it's super quick, but you've already had an introduction now to the very basics of all these tools. So take a moment now to think about the 3 different tools we'll be covering, what you're most interested in playing around with, getting that hands-on experience with that you may need a facilitator to kind of help you out, and then we'll transition. And then just at the very end, we'll come back. We may only have about 5 minutes for the debrief, and then that will be it. So I'll give you a minute just to think about where you want to move. Jen and Margie will be transitioning into, give me 1 sec. So it's on slide 28. They're going to be transitioning into 2 different Google Meet sessions. So if you're interested in Google Classrooms, the link, Margie's copying it right now and she's going to put it in the chat box. If you're interested in the screen recording, Jen, if you're able to copy your link and put it in the chat box as well. And then if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Google Meet, you're going to hang out with me in this classroom. So you don't have to move. But Jen and Margie will move into other breakout rooms.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm just going to go fix that now. I forgot the links were also in the notes on that slide. The link in the note on that slide for mine, if you want to play with screen recording, is wrong. I'm just fixing it right now. There we go. So I'm going to paste that here as well.
Great. All right, so Margie's posted hers there and she's put Google Classroom beside it, so you know it's Google Classroom, and Jen's done the same, so screen recording right there. So if you will be leaving us and heading over to one of those rooms, you'll need to first copy the link and then close this Google Meet and paste the link in a new tab. Otherwise, you're going to have 2 Google Meets going at the same time.
I did mention to mine before we left, and maybe this is something you've mentioned to yours, but since we didn't get to do a whole lot of delving into the hands-on, I've encouraged that once we do get these videos posted, that they have some time to go through. And if they need any additional support, we can revisit them. You know, they can hit us up on Twitter or what have you, and we can help them troubleshoot in the moment. That just-in-time support.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so of everybody who's here, can you just let me know if anybody was just in Margie's room?
I do see a lot of people filtering in that weren't from my room, so I'm assuming that these are Margie's coming back.
Okay, great. So just for the sake of time then, I'm going to just wrap it up because it is 3 p.m. So if you do have additional questions as you're going back through the tools, as Jen mentioned, we'll be posting everything on the website. So we'll be posting the video recording from today, the slides. So if you have, if you need to reference the slides in order to kind of go more in depth with the tools, you'll have all the content available. It does take a couple days for the videos to render and to be uploaded. So I would check back. Jen, when's a good time, like a day or so?
I have a backlog of 2 sessions that I still need to upload, so I told my participants about a week.
A week, okay. So there you go, about a week. But as Jen also mentioned, we will be available on Twitter if you want to get in touch with us. If you have, quick questions and you can't troubleshoot it and you need some answers, we'll be here as support. So you can either hit us up on Twitter or email. Just to leave you with a few different tools so that you know where to access. At the very end of the slides, we've put links for some additional tools. They've been categorized into multimedia, so we've got a few different ones there. Flipgrids, Weebly for education, that's a website building tool. Socrative, that's a formative assessment creation tool. And then we've also got a whole bunch of other ones, so more learning tools in general. So Raz Kids is a K-5 online reading tool. Education.com, I would highly suggest checking that out. An at-home learning online resource bank. It's got lessons, activities. Storybird allows elementary students to create picture books, to create stories online. So check them all out. Generally easy to use. And then we had a highlight, low light, but just for the sake of time, we'll probably just leave it there. If you did want to go and hit up the Padlet again and just leave us any suggestions for future sessions. So if there's something that we didn't cover, if there's like a theoretical topic that you want us to talk about, or if there's a specific tool that you're interested in learning more about, or even just like question and answer period. You can pop that into the Padlet and give us your feedback so that we can adjust as we go. And yep, we will repost the Padlet link here. All right, so thanks very much for joining. Sorry it's gone over by about 5 minutes. Hopefully you did get some ideas, whether it's teaching ideas or tools ideas, and sparked some interest in moving forward in some area. So thanks for joining, and hopefully these next couple of weeks will go well for you.
Laura, there was a lot of questions in mine, and there were still some questions I didn't get to. So I just want to let everyone know that was in the Google Classroom. For the video, I'm actually going to keep the video rolling, go through the questions, and show it on the screen so that you can actually see the video of the Google Classroom to answer the questions that I wasn't able to get to. And maybe that will, so you'll be given a video transcript afterwards, and then you can see all of the, how it works in Google Classroom, the responses to your classroom, to the other questions.
Great. Jeanette, is there anything you wanted to add before we close this off?
No, sorry. No, just thanks for coming, and good luck.